It's been quite some time since we last talked, hasn't it? And I know what you're thinking. Where is the Chicken Little Part 2 video? And well, I have to say that it's proven to be a lot longer than what I had originally expected. So in the meantime, I thought I'll give you something to pass the time. With this is a small segment that was originally planned to be part of the main video, but in the end, it really didn't fit the whole narrative. So I decided it can be its own little thing. But do be warned, this video is more about myself than the actual film. Enjoy. Okay, so when it comes to talking about Chicken Little, I notice that there's always this criticism that comes to people's minds. And that is that the town is so incredibly awful that it hinders their enjoyment of the film as a whole. Some even go as far as to say they find it uncomfortable or even too edgy. Meanwhile, there's a counter-argument to all of this with people saying that the town being mean is fine. Mainly because it's supposed to serve as a satire, basically saying that that's the joke. The film is making fun of people's stupidity and the superficial nature of sports and school, and that people who complain about it are being overly sensitive and missing the point. And that got me thinking that I have this to say. While the portrayal of the town has never insulted me personally, I'm very surprised as to how little I care about the townspeople. And coming from me, I find that beyond bizarre. Mainly because as a child, I used to think and feel bad for a plethora of things in animation. I used to think all the time about that scene from Atlantis where the submarine gets attacked by the Leviathan and you see Audrey closing the door to the boilers in an attempt to avoid the water flooding the entire thing. I remember thinking as a child how awful it was for the guy that was left behind, but also for this particular bearded guy that made it out just in time by jumping. Like, if it had taken him a couple more seconds, then he probably would have drowned like the other one. And then it's pointless anyway, because you see him die later on during the final escape pod chase. Then you have this scene in The Emperor's New Groove where this fly gets trapped in the spider's web asking for help just before it gets devoured. Or even outside of Disney, I still remember thinking about the settlers that got eaten by crocodiles in Scooby-Doo Zombie Island, and that from all the zombies, these two were the ones who really caught my attention. Because while everyone looks like evil pirates, Confederate soldiers, or even gangsters, these two look like innocent old people who were on a cruise and then got brutally murdered by the cat people. Those were the type of things I used to think of in school instead of paying attention. Every day, all day long.
Particular Basin hypotenuse. Something I guess you already know by heart, Mr. Valentino, since you seem to be distracted again. So just in case you forgot, this is a class, this is a board, this is math, and these are numbers. Numbers, get it? Good. So now pay attention.
And that is what brings me to my next point. While on the one hand that it bothers me that, besides one element of the film, I never cared much for the townspeople. I mean, they get crushed, they panic or get vaporized, and still, I never gave 99% of them a second thought. But on the other hand, there's something very bizarre in here because through their meanness, I think I can still find something of an incidental lesson in the film. Mainly because as the film is presented, Chicken Little strives to be accepted by this awful society that always puts him down, and the only real thing he wants to do is, well, to belong. Disney wants to present it as a story of someone who proves himself and therefore is accepted. But to me, this is a story of foolishly trying to fit into circles you're not meant to be a part of. Because I remember when I was a child, all I wanted was to fit in. I wanted to be popular. To have friends to talk to instead of eating alone every single day. To have the guts to answer to the teacher's questions instead of staying quiet out of fear even if I knew the answer, which was often the case. And finally, to have someone to trust and care for instead of everyone making fun of me. And that's the thing. Everyone made fun of me. I was so low in the pecking order that even the nerds would mock me. Hell, even the teachers. I still remember the saying Mr. Boris used to say about me in front of the class. Well, if
Valentino understands, then everyone understands.
And just like Chicken Little, I was set on proving myself. Little by little, I started talking more, tried to appear more extroverted and secure of myself. I went from eating alone every single day to talking in public, acting, and even doing stand-up in talent shows. And before I knew it, not only was my self-esteem improved, but people's perception of me too. However, although my social status might have improved, people still remain the same. So whilst hanging out with the so-called popular kids, I started noticing how they wanted me to participate in tormenting the kids who they perceived as lesser in order to keep my position among them. Not only that, but I also had to renounce everything that I considered dear to me. You know, the stuff that makes me, well, me, all in the name of fitting in. Sadly, I could not gaslight myself into being happy. Sports bored me, school was a drag, and the so-called popular kids? Well, I noticed how most of them were actually kind of pathetic in their own little ways. You know, the whole, once you see a god bleed, you know you can kill it. That's what basically happened. They could mock people and hand insults out like waterfalls, but when it came to their lives, they couldn't take the mockery. They would cry out foul play the moment they detected any form of injustice. In fact, a lot of them had the same insecurities that many of the unpopular kids had. Oh, my weight. Oh, my dad is disappointed in me. Oh, I'm sad because my pet turtle died. And well, once I noticed it, that broke me. Mainly because when I was mocked, I kept my sorrows to myself. When my grandpa died, and they all made fun of me, I kept on going. When they threw rotten food at my head and broke my things, I didn't cry. And even when they used to stab me with forks and compasses, I never even let out a whimper. And yet, they couldn't even take someone calling them ugly or dumb to their face without crying Bloody Mary. I went from thinking that they were above me to being disillusioned with people altogether. I thought, is this really it? Am I really selling my soul to impress these people? In the end, I went back to eating alone. This time content knowing that it was my own choice, being wary of the world even before the 6th grade, wishing I could just vanish from the world. And before long, I did.
Well, I know